Behind me is the world-famous Dakota building, a place where John Lennon lived for so many years. And I'm standing in a place called Strawberry Field, which is a tribute to John Lennon. Do you remember the British invasion? I'm not talking about some kind of military coup. I'm talking about when rock and roll came to the United States in the 1960s, and more specifically, I'm talking about the Beatles. I'll never forget the images of them getting off the airplane and, just coming to America, being on the Ed Sullivan Show. I distinctly remember trying to talk my mom and dad into getting rid of my crew cut so I could have cool, long hair like the Beatles. Oh my gosh, all my friends, we all wanted to look like the Beatles. And as that fad kind of, passed on and I got a little bit older, I really became a huge fan of their music, as many of you did, and followed their careers individually as time went on. And as a side note, any of you who don't know who the Beatles are, you need to definitely go and get some of their records. You need to talk to your mom, your dad, your aunts, your uncles. You got to get into the Beatles. My children are 11 and 14 and they're big fans of the Beatles because I exposed them to it. I think it's our responsibility as parents to make sure our kids know who these guys are. They are arguably the greatest musicians in the history of modern time. Now, obviously, we started off your show, we're going to be talking about one of them in particular, and ironically, I picked John Lennon, even though I was more of a Paul McCartney fan. And if you don't know this, they are the two most prolific songwriters, according to Billboard, in the history of music. Pretty remarkable stuff. So let's put Mr. McCartney on the side. Maybe we'll talk about him some other time, and let's talk about John Lennon, because John Lennon started his musical career when he was about 15. That's when his mom bought him a guitar. And then he went ahead and immediately started a band. He didn't hang out for a while. He started the Quarrymen right away, and he got out there. And any of you who know musically stuff about John Lennon, he's not considered a great guitar player by any means. He's not even considered a great vocalist. But what he did is he took action right away, and he just started pursuing his dreams. And whether it was his charisma, his personality, his songwriting ability, whatever it was, there was something different about him. And when he hooked up with Paul McCartney and they formed the Beatles, obviously the rest of it is history. But I just want you to understand, this was just a regular kid growing up in Liverpool, which was not any kind of a wealthy area, not kind of any major city. And he had a kind of difficult life. His mom died in a car accident when he was about 18 years old. He had the same struggles that all other teenagers have, and like so many teenagers that are watching this right now, he had a dream and he had a vision about being a musician, and obviously he took action. I want to make sure you get that point. You can have a dream, but thoughts determine what you want, dreams determine what you want. Action, and only action, is going to determine what you get. So John Lennon took action. He started his band, he started rolling, he met other people, he understood it wasn't perfect right away. I mean, I don't think if John Lennon had stayed with the original four guys he was in a band with, any of us would have ever heard of him. But he did get together with Paul McCartney, they did form the Beatles, timing was right, they got some lucky breaks, they came to America, and boy, you talk about timing, you talk about being in the right place at the right time, you talk about being the first musical icons, and it just spun out of control. There's just no way John Lennon, as a teenager, when he got his first Epiphone guitar, was sitting there and envisioning anything like this could happen. He was just passionate about something he loved to do, and nature just took its course. So once again, what I want to share with you is, what are you passionate about? What are you excited about? And as John Lennon's life went on, he wasn't just a great musician. He wasn't just one of the greatest songwriters. He wasn't just one of the greatest performers. He became a cultural icon. When he got done with his career with the Beatles, one of his most popular songs individually was Give Peace a Chance. Now, you may not agree with John Lennon's political views at all, and that's okay, but you can't argue the fact that during the Vietnam War, which was a very turbulent time where people had very definite opinions about a lot of stuff, there was a whole bunch of people that were moved by that song, and they were moved by John Lennon's peaceful demonstrations to share his opinions, folks. And it's just remarkable how one individual who probably never even envisioned he'd be good enough to be a professional musician at any high level was able to go out and not only do that, not only make millions upon millions of dollars, but have his opinions adopted by people all over the country and actually all over the world. Once again, this show is called The Power of One. It's remarkable what one person was able to do by pursuing their dreams. Now, John wrote hundreds of songs, and dozens of them are extremely memorable, but probably the one that's the most memorable will be the song Imagine. And it's pretty ironic because, as you saw, we started our show right in Central Park, right outside of the Dakota building where John lived for a good 10 years and actually was tragically gunned down right outside of that building. The Dakota building where his widow, Yoko Ono, still lives to this day. And John fell in love with New York City. He fell in love with Central Park, and it was an area right outside where they lived that was his absolute favorite. And as a tribute to him, it is now called Strawberry Fields. If you're not familiar with the Beatles songs, that was one of their most popular songs, Strawberry Fields Forever. And now, as a tribute, that area has been named to John. It's ironic, it's sort of in a shape of a teardrop, and the center of that teardrop, the main area, is a mosaic plaque. It's actually copied after a mosaic from Pompeii way back in the Roman days. But in the center of that is just one word, and it's the word imagine. Now, if you're not familiar with John Lennon's song Imagine, he talked in that song about a world the way he envisioned it, the way it could be in a perfect situation. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. The brotherhood of man. That was the way he was. He wanted peace. He wanted everyone to get along. That was his vision. Now, you may listen to some of the lyrics of that song and say, well, I disagree with that, or I don't like this. But the point is, he was brave enough to say what he wanted the world to live by, and he influenced a whole lot of other people. So let me just ask you this question. What do you imagine, or do you imagine? Do you ever just sit there and think about what would a perfect world be like if you had the ability to do something about it? And you don't have to change the galaxy. You don't need to change the world per se. How about your world? Imagine no debt. Imagine you find your ideal soulmate. Imagine you get yourself in peak physical condition. Imagine you get a lot of money in the bank and you're able to live life on your terms. Imagine something, folks, because I got to tell you, most people are so busy in their day-to-day lives, they never take the time to imagine anything. Many of you who are watching this have heard of the law of attraction. Well, you can't attract something to you if you don't know what you want. So I'm sharing with you, when this show is over, I really encourage you to take a page out of John Lennon's book and sit down. You don't have to have musical abilities. You don't need to be able to play the music behind it. You don't need to be able to come up with great lyrics. You need to sit down for a few minutes quietly by yourself and imagine, what would you like to happen in your life? It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you're young. It doesn't matter if you're old. Forget about all that junk. From this point forward, what would you like to create in your life? Whether it be something like I just mentioned, simple, something for you, or is there a bigger cause in your heart? Is there something else that you want to achieve? Because the bottom line is, you know, with this show, The Power of One, there are so many amazing movements that have happened, so many things that have touched the lives of millions or tens of millions of people, but it all began in the mind of one man or one woman. So as we finish up here, once again, one of the most powerful words in the English language, one of the most impacting words, and something that is going to make a difference in somebody's life, not just yours, if you take the time to stop and do it. The word imagine. Let's turn this show off right now and let's stop and get into our dream space and imagine what a perfect world, what a perfect life would be for you. We'll see you next week, but take time to make sure you're doing something that you can imagine your life becoming a masterpiece.